With midterm elections in just 2 days, America is in a very angry moment. Republicans attack Democrats, and Democrats return fire. Social media is a showcase of our anger. An analysis by the New York Times this fall found that online use of the phrase civil war has exploded. Now, leading voices in academia and tech are saying that rather than simply reflecting the polarization in society, platforms like Facebook and Twitter are helping to create it. 60 Minutes first met Tristan Harris in 2017. The co-founder of the Center for Humane Technology argued that social media platforms were addicting us to maximize profit. Now he's warning they are generating billions by making us angry.
The more moral outrageous language you use, the more inflammatory language, contemptuous language, the more indignation you use, the more it will get shared. So we are being rewarded for being division entrepreneurs. The better you are at innovating a new way to be divisive, we will pay you in more likes, followers, and retweets.
In his 2020 documentary, The Social Dilemma, Tristan Harris made the case that social media platforms have hijacked our attention. Now he cites a new study of Twitter showing that attacking political opponents is almost guaranteed to draw attention.
Each individual term referring to your political outgroup increased the odds of that post being retweeted or reshared by 67%.
Your outgroup being
Outgroup
your
being
opponents, people
your
on the other
opponents,
side.
the other side. Yeah, exactly.
These platforms, are they not just reflecting who we are and what we think and the divisions that are already there?
They're supercharging 100 or 1,000 times to 1 the worst parts of ourselves.
Here's an example from the day the Department of Justice released a photo showing classified documents in former President Donald Trump's Florida home. A tweet highlighting a straight news story on the subject received about 2,000 likes. But a tweet from a Republican congresswoman calling Trump's opponents dumbasses was liked 10 times as much. And a tweet from the left labeling Donald Trump a traitor was liked 20 times more. The straight news story, got retweeted a couple of times.
Right.
The angry stories, exponentially more tweets.
Exactly.
And Harris says anger skews the political landscape.
Why is it that the world knows more about Marjorie Taylor Greene than they know about all the other hundreds of congressional candidates? It's because the enraging, inflammatory stuff goes the most viral.
We are tribal creatures who love to do us versus them, and we're now learning to coexist with a technology that tries to force that down our throat, that tries to make us angry all the time.
Jonathan Haidt is a social psychologist and professor at NYU's Stern School of Business. In studying social media platforms' drive to keep us glued to our devices and to their ads, he traces our current troubles to the invention of the like, share, and retweet features a decade ago.
These changes in the technology that made everything much more viral and explosive, it's as though it gave everybody a dart gun. It's like it gave everybody the ability to complain, attack, criticize anyone at any time in a very short space with no need for evidence, no accountability.
Haidt says the people most likely to fire their social media dart guns are those on the far right and the far left. And what percentage of the population are they?
It's about 7 or 8% on each side.
That's it?
Yeah, that's right.
So the extremes have been handed the power to dominate, even though they are fewer in number.
That's right, exactly.
The moderate majority, Haidt says, is either exhausted or intimidated.
It's what I call structural stupidity. That is, you have very smart people, highly educated, highly intelligent, but you put them in a situation in which dissent is punished severely, and what happens? They go silent. And when the moderates, or when anyone is afraid to question the dominant view, the organization, the institution gets stupid.
Take the case of Ronald Sullivan, a professor at Harvard Law School who was also the faculty dean of Winthrop House, an undergraduate residence hall. In January 2019, Sullivan joined Harvey Weinstein's sexual assault defense team under the principle that every accused criminal is entitled to a robust defense.
So at Harvard, some students objected. Now, great, let them object to Ron Sullivan defending Harvey Weinstein. That's what you should do in school. You should make an argument, and then he can answer back. That would be great, but that's not what happened.
What happened was that a Harvard undergrad demanded in a Facebook post that Sullivan step down as dean, calling his defense of Weinstein deeply trauma-inducing for sexual assault victims.
The students use a discourse, a dialogue of, he is dangerous. His presence near me is threatening to me.
Within a few months, Harvard responded by removing Sullivan as dean of the residence hall. It's not just professors on the firing line. In a recent survey, more than half of college students said they're afraid to express views on political and social issues in the classroom. As a professor, what do you do?
I just avoid controversial topics.
Really?
Yes.
Isn't that what college is for?
It used to be.
Tristan Harris says the intimidation and anger cut across political lines.
I think the deepest, perverse thing about these platforms is that they have captured the meaning of social participation in society, that they've colonized and privatized, that social participation means I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook.
And competition is fierce among those platforms for our attention and for the advertising dollars that attention generates.
Facebook isn't saying, let me make design decisions that are going to strengthen democracy. They're saying, how do I evolve the product in a direction that will get more engagement from people? Because if I don't do that, I'm just going to lose to the companies that do.
Companies like TikTok.
Companies like TikTok. And TikTok has become one of the most popular apps around the entire world.
TikTok has done that by serving up an addictive mix of short videos. Some are silly. Others overtly political. It's owned by a Chinese company called ByteDance. And Harris says the version that's served to Chinese consumers, called Douyin, is very different from the one available in the West.
In their version of TikTok, if you're under 14 years old, they show you science experiments you can do at home, museum exhibits, patriotism videos, and educational videos. And they also limit it to only 40 minutes per day. Now, they don't ship that version of TikTok to the rest of the world. So it's almost like they recognize that technology is influencing kids' development, and they make their domestic version a spinach version of TikTok, while they ship the opium version to the rest of the world.
The version served to the West has kids hooked for hours at a time. The impact, Harris says, is predictable.
There's a survey of preteens in the US and China asking what is the most aspirational career that you want to have. In the US, the number one was influencer.
Social media influencer.
And in China, the number one was astronaut. Again, you allow those two societies to play out for a few generations, I can tell you what your world is going to look like.
TikTok tells us it gives American users tools to limit screen time, but those tools are entirely voluntary. And national security concerns have triggered new calls this past week for TikTok to be banned in the U.S. Twitter points out that it asks users to think twice before sharing potentially harmful posts. But within days of buying Twitter, Elon Musk tweeted a conspiracy theory about the attack on Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband. It was later deleted. And Facebook says it has cut the overall amount of political content that its 240 million American users see. Monica Bickert is its head of content policy.
Most people on Facebook don't want to see political content. They are following what's happening in the lives of their family and friends and sharing the moments from their lives.
And Bickert says Facebook does take steps to downplay the angriest posts.
Can you find angry political content online? You can. Can you walk into the average family's Thanksgiving dinner and hear people having an angry political conversation? You can.
Tristan Harris says that all the social media platforms are making those conversations even more heated.
What I think there's been a failure to recognize is the direct conflict between an engagement for profit business model and what's good for democracy. Another way you could say it is that the business model is to ruin Thanksgiving dinner.
We are as divided as I can remember in my lifetime.
Yeah. A lot of people will say, well, hold on a second. Partisanship and division, we've had that in many times throughout history. Always. That's true. Also, has partisanship in television and radio pre-existed social media? Yes. Have we ever wired up the most powerful artificial intelligence in the world, pointed at your brainstem to show you the most enraging content on a daily basis, and the longer you scroll, the more you get? We have never done that before.
Facebook's Monica Bickert insists it's just wrong to blame it for America's anger.
Also, if we look at who's becoming more polarized in the United States, the greatest increase is among people over the age of 65. And they are the least likely to be using social media.
Many people watching us will say, well, I don't use social media. Why should I care about this? But we're all downstream from social media affecting television, affecting radio, affecting journalism. More and more of journalism is about covering the outrage exchange of what happened on Twitter.
Harris believes the best path to reform would be stricter government regulation of social media platforms, or at least a requirement that they be more transparent. Now, Facebook will tell you that they're all about transparency now. That's not convincing?
They publish reports that they define what the metrics are, and it's like grading your own homework.
Harris has launched an online course which aims to give people working in tech the tools to push for reform from within. And what can an individual user do? Jonathan Haidt says simply refuse to be gladiators in the Colosseum of social media.
You can't win a war on social media. Just don't engage. Don't engage in the public battles, because that's just feeding the beast.
You don't mean disengage from the political process. You mean just disengage from these platforms?
Yes. When public discourse was moved into the middle of the Roman Colosseum, I'm saying disengage from that. Walk out of the Colosseum and still be politically active.
Tristan Harris says real change may have to be forced in court.
I think we have to do with social media what happened with big tobacco.
What stopped big tobacco was that the attorneys general in different states
That's right.
actually went after them.
The attorneys general in big tobacco had an enormous role to play in litigating that there was harms to people and their families.
Is that what it's going to take with
I think that's what's going to take
social
with
media
social
companies?
media. Yes. And we're seeing attorneys general move already one step in that direction.
Attorneys general in at least 8 states are coordinating a nationwide investigation of social media platforms.
We now know that there's all these harms in social media products designed for engagement. We've done it before. We did it with seatbelts. We've done it with big tobacco. We've taken lead out of gasoline. We have made these changes once we recognize that certain products were toxic for us. We can do it again.
It's the vote that holds America together. Belief that with a ballot, voices are heard, disputes are addressed, and there's always another chance. Countries without this belief tend to be in bondage or at war. Election day is coming, but across America, belief is under attack. Politicians who say the 2020 election was stolen are running for governor in 19 states, attorney general in 10, and in 12 states, election deniers are running for Secretary of State, which would give them power over elections. After 2 years of investigations and audits, no fraud or error has been found in any state that would change the 2020 outcome. But in 2022, spreading doubt has been key to an endorsement from Donald Trump. No state has been more deeply riven by this than Arizona, where a split in the GOP has Republicans on opposite sides of a Grand Canyon.
On one side of the Arizona chasm stands Rusty Bowers, a lifelong Republican and artist who became Arizona's Speaker of the House. Bowers told us he was disappointed when Joe Biden won. So when President Trump and Rudy Giuliani called after the election, He was listening.
First, Rudy he said, well, there's been a lot of fraud all across the country and in Arizona, and then he listed off large numbers in categories that would be illegal, dead people, stolen ballots.
Bowers says Giuliani wanted him to hold a vote to revoke Biden's electors.
And I said, but Rudy, I want the proof. You're going to give me the proof? And he said, yes.
So Giuliani and co-counsel Jenna Ellis flew out to meet Bowers.
You left the meeting with Rudy Giuliani thinking what?
That I wasn't happy. I said, okay, time out. Mr. Giuliani, you said you were going to bring me some proof, names, etc., of all of these people. Did you bring me the proof? He looked at Jenna Ellis and he said, do we have the proof? And she said, yes, we do. Do you have it with you? No. Where is it? Well, it might be back at the hotel room. And I said, I asked you for the proof. You said you'd bring it. You're not bringing it. You're asking me to break my oath and make up something to pull electors and replace electors, which has never been done in the history of the United States. And I'm going to try that on my state.
Without Bowers, Giuliani found an ally willing to call the vote criminal, Arizona State Representative Mark Fincham.
It's exceedingly hard for me to place a label on what we've heard other than racketeering. Good old-fashioned mobster racketeering. We were caught between the
4 weeks after Mr. Trump's defeat, Fincham held an unofficial hearing featuring Giuliani.
A conspiracy that was hatched by the crooked leaders of the Democratic Party.
A day of allegations without credible evidence ended with this.
When Satan wants to extinguish a light, he will stop at nothing. So be on your guard, put on the full armor of God, and be prepared to fight.
Mark Fincham fought, and now the 65-year-old former police officer is the Republican nominee for Arizona's Secretary of State, which would give him authority over elections.
Ladies and gentlemen, we know it, and they know it. Donald Trump won.
But Mark Brnovich does not know it. He's Arizona's Republican Attorney General who's investigated for 2 years and has a word for claims of fraud.
Horse, and that's what it is. Most of it's horse, and I've been trying to scrape it off my shoes for the last year.
Brnovich supported Trump, who called him with advice.
He goes, all you got to do is say the election's fraudulent and you will be a superstar. You'll be the most popular guy in America. And I told him, I said, Mr. President, I didn't become Attorney General to be a star. I brought my star with me. And I don't need anybody, whether it's the former president or any other person, validating what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
What he's doing is bringing indictments in every 2020 vote fraud case that he can back with evidence. Altogether, to date, from the general election, Arizona has indicted 12 defendants in cases involving a total of 12 ballots. 12. Statewide. Biden won Arizona by 10,000.
There was no one in this country that wanted to find evidence of fraud more than I did. But I thought it was important to systematically go through and say, no, this is the facts, this is the evidence, everyone's entitled to their own opinions. But when you're an actual prosecutor, when you're the actual government, there's a higher obligation. You can't afford to be sloppy.
In addition to Brnovich's investigations, in 2021, the Republican-led state Senate audited Phoenix's Maricopa County, home to 60% of the state vote. The audit was done by a company that had never audited an election. The audit's hand recount confirmed Joe Biden won. But its report also raised questions about discrepancies it found. Those questions were answered online in detail by Maricopa County. Still, widespread fraud is Mark Fincham's charge.
When you steal something, that's not really a win. That's a fraud.
That was in Washington the day before the attack on the Capitol, which Fincham describes this way.
This entire J6 crap was manufactured to create a narrative that there was an assault on the Capitol. This fits into the Marxist ideology of how do you go to one-party rule.
Today, Fincham is running neck and neck with his Democratic opponent, Adrian Fontes, who helped lead the 2020 election in Maricopa County.
We are far too divided away from each other based on lies and conspiracies. And we as election administrators across Arizona have to do a better job showing folks that the system is quite good.
I'd like to see a world where it's easy to vote but hard to cheat.
We asked Fincham for credible proof of fraud. He raised not evidence, but those questions from the state Senate audit. Next, Fincham told us about a mysterious post-election email which he featured in a rally.
Where we had a whistleblower who sent an email not just to the DOJ, but to every single legislator saying, there's 35,000 fictitious voters and they've been inserted in the system where you'll never find them. Well, we believe we found them.
In the email Fincham speaks of, a Brian Watson said Democrats added bogus votes electronically in Pima County. The writer had no evidence, asked not to be contacted, and closed his email account.
Why would you give this any credence?
Again, it's an open question. I want to know, was there a possibility that this happened? Now, we've now proven that it happened, Scott.
How so?
We've got 2 precincts that show over 100% of the people registered to vote in that precinct voted. That is an undeniable fact.
But it is deniable by Pima County, which says no precinct had more votes than voters. Another of Fincham's frequent points concerns a pair of indictments.
We have, for example, in Yuma County, ballot harvesting and votes. I mean, we've got people who were indicted for the very thing that we're talking about right now, who pled guilty. And frankly, those votes altered the outcome of Yuma County. Yuma County, we've actually had indictments and people that have pled guilty to ballot trafficking.
How many ballots were involved?
I don't know off the top of my head.
It's 4.
Okay. Whether it's 4 or 4,000, doesn't matter.
It wasn't the presidential election, it was a primary.
It doesn't matter. It's a defect in the system.
A minuscule defect. 2 women in Yuma County pleaded guilty to collecting 4 ballots and dropping them in a ballot box. It's against state law to deposit a ballot that isn't yours or your family's.
It's 4 ballots in a primary.
In that instance. In that instance.
You have a bigger one?
Well, we've got information that's been turned over to the Attorney General's office, and you say that there was nothing there. Okay. Then I'm going to have to live with that. But do I know for a fact that there were other ballot trafficking operations around the country and some in Arizona? Yeah, I do.
Name one.
Yuma County, 25,000 ballots.
What happened?
Same fingerprints on those ballots for 5 individuals. So where'd that go? Where's that evidence? I know it's been turned over to the Attorney General's office. I know that the FBI field office actually did the prints.
That's false, according to the FBI. Yuma County told us that no one in law enforcement fingerprinted 25,000 ballots. Fincham often says that evidence is with Attorney General Brnovich, implying that something big is coming.
In fact, he has a mountain of evidence that's sitting in his office.
But Brnovich told us his investigation is essentially over.
We as prosecutors deal in facts and evidence, and I'm not like the clowns that throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks.
Clowns.
Clowns. Did I say that? Yes, I think that there were a lot of clowns out there that they saw what they wanted to see. What is that Simon Garfunkel line that a man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest? There was a lot of that going on.
It's going on in the top Arizona races, where the Republican for governor is a denier.
We had a fraudulent election, a corrupt election, and we have an illegitimate president sitting in the White House.
It's like a giant grift in some ways.
A grift, a swindle, is what you're saying.
Yes.
all of these accusations, the case in Yuma, scaremongering, the Brian Watson email, scaremongering. You called Arizona the epicenter of fraud. It's scaremongering. It's not the fraud that is breaking people's faith in our elections, it's people like you.
So you say. But when we look at the violations of state statute, this is the epicenter of the problem.
Nationwide, 190 election deniers are running for the U.S. House and 14 for the U.S. Senate, according to the Brookings Institution. Mark Brnovich lost his primary to a denier, and so did Rusty Bowers, which may come as a relief.
Don't come over. Don't come over.
Post-election, Trump supporters and conspiracy spinners laid siege to Bowers' home up to 3 times a week.
Rusty Bowers is a pedophile.
You go home.
He had to fend them off. A man with a pistol, demonstrators in their own armored car. And at the state capitol, on January 6, 2021, they came with rifles and a guillotine. In Arizona, when belief in the vote eroded, this is what filled the void.
Has the Republican Party that you've known all your life been hijacked?
It's a large group of them that is doing the hijacking. I just don't think it's a majority. Its effectiveness as a party and its legitimacy in public discourse is grossly undermined by how they've acted in this state.
It was just days after the 2020 presidential election that lawyers supporting then-President Donald Trump began spreading unsubstantiated claims that an American company, Dominion Voting Systems, had rigged the election. They said Dominion was backed by Venezuela and that its machines and software switched millions of votes from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. They never showed any evidence, but that didn't stop pro-Trump attorneys from making baseless claims or conservative news networks from giving them plenty of airtime. Dominion has filed 8 lawsuits seeking more than $10 billion in damages against Fox News and other networks, corporations, and individuals. But Dominion's CEO, John Poulos, has remained largely silent until now. We spoke with him about the lawsuits, the lies, and the irreparable damage he says they've caused to his company and his employees.
People have been put into danger. Their families have been put into danger. Their lives have been upended, and all because of lies. It was a very clear calculation that they knew there were lies and they were repeating them and endorsing them.
It's important to you people admit what they said was wrong.
It's important to me. It's important to all the people whose families have been impacted by this. Anderson, my kids still are not allowed to get any package from the front door until we verify that it's actually from a trusted sender.
You're that concerned about somebody sending something to your house?
It's not unfounded concern.
People have done that.
People have done this. People are warning that they will continue to do this.
For John Poulos and his company, the trouble began 5 days after the election when Fox Business host Maria Bartiromo brought up Dominion with attorney Sidney Powell.
Sidney, we talked about the Dominion software. I know that there were voting irregularities. Tell me about that.
That's to put it mildly. The computer glitches could not and should not have happened at all. That is where the fraud took place, where they were flipping votes in the computer system or adding votes that did not exist.
Sidney Powell was never able to show fraud, but she was repeatedly invited back on Fox networks, as was the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, who also wove a false narrative about Smartmatic, an election technology company which is now suing Giuliani, Fox News, and others.
Smartmatic is a company that was formed by 3 Venezuelans who were very close to the dictator Chavez of Venezuela, and it was formed in order to fix elections. That's the company that owns Dominion.
Does Smartmatic own Dominion?
No. We do have a relationship. We are competitors.
Were you associated with the late Hugo Chavez?
Absolutely not.
Do you use a Venezuelan company's software that's been used to steal election out of the countries?
Absolutely not. Anderson, I can cut all of this short. We were founded in Toronto, which is where my family was from, and there was nothing to do with Venezuela.
Can you flip votes in the computer system? Can you add votes that did not exist?
Absolutely not.
President Trump first mentioned Dominion in a tweet November 12th and recorded this video a few weeks later, which was posted on Facebook.
We have a company that's very suspect. Its name is Dominion. With the turn of a dial or the change of a chip, you can press a button for Trump and the vote goes to Biden. What kind of a system is this? We have to go to paper. Maybe it takes longer, but the only secure system is paper.
Why not just have paper ballots?
We do have paper ballots. What the machines do is they count those paper ballots in a way that makes it very easy for people to verify after the fact through the means of audits and recounts.
Dominion makes two types of machines. One is called a ballot marker. It's a touchscreen device that a voter can use to mark their choices and then print the ballot. The second machine is a scanner that reads that paper ballot, counts the vote, and immediately stores the ballot securely.
A voter takes a paper ballot. They've made their marks, however they make their marks, depending on the jurisdiction. As they deposit it into the ballot box, it goes through a digital scanner and then drops into the ballot box. So how do you hack a paper ballot? With our system,
he showed us how it works.
This is the scanner that sits atop a locked and sealed ballot box. This is how they cast their ballot. Goes through a scanner, and now we have an image of the ballot that we just cast, and we have the paper ballot that is used for recounts.
John Poulos says it was watching the presidential recounts in Florida in 2000, with those arguments over hanging chads, that got him interested in improving how paper ballots were marked and counted. He was an engineer working at a startup in Silicon Valley and began looking at ways to make it easier to recount paper ballots and to help people with disabilities vote without assistance.
Our goal was to allow any voter to make their marks on a paper ballot in a very clear, unambiguous way, regardless of physical ability.
John Poulos is Canadian and founded Dominion in 2002. He remains its chief executive, though it was acquired by an American investment group in 2018. Dominion is based in Denver. Do you ever think to yourself, I got into this to help paraplegics and blind people vote more easily, and look what happened?
I think about it all the time.
Dominion is one of 3 companies that make most of the voting systems in America. In the 2020 presidential election, their machines were in 28 states, red states and blue. On election day, in a precinct, are your machines hooked up to the internet?
No, not by any stretch. We go through a number of certifications, government certifications, and the first one is at a federal level. So those standards mandate that election systems, such as ours, are designed to work in a closed system, air-gapped, no internet.
In all the major swing states of 2020, there are paper ballots backing up.
Not only are there paper ballots that make up the official record, those paper ballots have been hand counted and audited over 1,000 times on just the 2020 election.
Recounts and audits in the swing states of Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Nevada all confirmed Dominion's results. More than 60 lawsuits around the country challenging the election by Trump or his supporters were ultimately withdrawn or failed. In Georgia, there have been 3 recounts, 2 electronic ones and 1 hand recount.
In front of cameras, bipartisan poll watchers, and thousands of local residents across the state of Georgia, and it once again reaffirmed the results. That should have put an end to all of it, but the lies persisted.
And so have incidents of harassment and threats against John Poulos and his employees.
Every single person at Dominion is going to end up in an orange jumpsuit in handcuffs. You whores, you cheating pigs.
Yeah, good afternoon, scumbags. We're going to blow your building up, piece of shit.
I don't wish to sit here and say that this is something that happened 18 months ago. This is something that continues to happen every single day for us. Last Friday, we had an office on lockdown. 2 days prior to that, I was on a phone call with one of our employees, who's a mother of two, very upset and crying. It's hard to talk about.
Had something been said to her personally?
A very disgusting death threat in detail.
Received
on her personal cell phone.
It's completely and utterly surreal. None of these lies have been substantiated to any extent. Every single one of them has been debunked.
Chris Krebs was director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, charged with protecting the 2020 election. He called it the most secure election in American history, and days later was fired by President Trump. He now has a cyber consulting firm and is a contributor for CBS News. We showed him a press conference held 2 days after his firing at the headquarters of the Republican National Committee, when Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and others continued their attacks on Dominion machines and software.
It can set and run an algorithm that probably ran all over the country to take a certain percentage of votes from President Trump and flip them to President Biden.
Do you remember watching that?
Yeah, I tweeted about it immediately afterwards. I think I said something along the lines of that was the most insane and dangerous 45 minutes of TV in, American history, effectively.
How secure was the 2020 election?
Let me put it this way. It was the most litigated. It was the most scrutinized. It was the most audited. This election was put through the ringer from so many different directions. And what I tend to like to say is, don't listen to me. Listen to Bill Barr. Bill Barr said it. He was then the Attorney General of the United States.
This is what Bill Barr later said to the January 6th committee.
These claims on the Dominion voting machines, and they were idiotic claims. I saw absolutely zero basis for the allegations, but they were made in such a sensational way that they obviously were influencing a lot of people.
Dominion began alerting Fox News and other networks of the false allegations they were broadcasting November 12th, 4 days after Sidney Powell first discussed Dominion with Maria Bartiromo. But Dominion says Fox News never retracted their reporting. You gave them a lot of chances to correct their statements.
They still haven't corrected them.
To me, that's the most powerful part of the complaint.
Lee Levine is a First Amendment attorney who's litigated cases for 40 years on behalf of most media companies, including CBS and Fox. He's retired now, but his old firm is currently representing CNN and me in a separate matter, filed by attorneys who also represent Dominion in its cases against Fox News and others.
Take the Fox case, for example. November 12th seems to me to be the key date in that case, because that's the day that Dominion started on a regular basis sending information sheets to every producer on every show at Fox that was having Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani on, saying, here are the true facts. Here are links supporting our assertions that these are the true facts. And then these people continued to invite Giuliani and Powell on their shows.
Defamation cases are hard to prove, aren't they?
Yes, they are. The plaintiff has to prove what the law calls actual malice. You need to show basically that the defendant published or broadcast a deliberate lie, a calculated falsehood.
They knew it was a lie when they broadcast it.
They knew it was a lie, or they knew it was probably a lie.
How strong is Dominion's case against Fox and the others?
I think it is much stronger than most defamation cases that I have seen. I might say it is the strongest.
How many defamation cases have you seen?
I have litigated myself hundreds, and I'm certainly aware of every significant defamation case in the last 40 years.
And this is the strongest one?
In my judgment.
In a statement to 60 Minutes, Fox said it's confident it will prevail, citing freedom of the press protections, and stating it was reporting on a newsworthy allegation made by the then president and aired segments fact-checking the allegations against Dominion. Dominion is suing Fox News and its parent corporation for $1.6 billion each, and in its statement, Fox said that Dominion's financial demand is unsupported. Efforts by Fox News and other defendants to have the lawsuits dismissed have been rejected by the courts. Do you think that you can show not only that they lied, but they knew that they were lying?
I don't even think, I think that's the easiest part.
You, as a company, told them specifically, repeatedly.
We told them. We told them in real time. Others told them. Government officials told them. Partisan government officials told them. People inside the Trump administration told them. Local election officials on both sides of the aisle told them. This is not a matter of not knowing the truth. They knew the truth.
Two years ago, most Americans voted for change, and if the polls are to be believed, they're about to do it again. In the latest CBS News New York Times poll, 80% said they want most incumbents out of Congress, regardless of whether that incumbent is a Democrat or a Republican. There is a grim mood among people who were counting on a recovery that's now fallen flat. The economists who decide such things say that the Great Recession ended back in June of 2009, but since then, we've lost another 500,000 jobs, which helps explain why there is so much anger in the land. We saw a lot of it right in the middle of the country, among the people who've endured the recession longer than anyone.
What surprised you the most about this recession?
I think the depth of it and the length of it. I think what surprised me the most about this one is it just doesn't want to end.
You know, the economists say that the recession's over.
Really? You should come to Newton, Iowa.
Dave McNear's advertising company is like a lot of small businesses. It's getting smaller. Maxim Advertising in Newton, Iowa puts its customers' logos on nearly anything, and business had only grown for 22 years. Until 2007. And what was all of this?
This was filled Maytag. Maytag
invented its washing machine in Newton 103 years ago. 5,000 people worked for Maytag here, but Newton lost all of those jobs. Maytag was bought out, and by 2007, the factory was closed. Many of the jobs went to Mexico. No one knew it then, but these were the opening days of the Great Recession. Now, layoffs that started with corporations are cascading into mom and pop shops. How many employees did you have at the top?
22.
And today?
10.
Do you remember the first person you had to lay off?
One of the very hardest days of my life. My wife and I stayed up all night long. We talked, we prayed, we struggled, and you know what, man, that's a gut-wrenching feeling. You hate it. I hate it, and I never wanted to have to do it again.
I wonder, when you look forward now, what you think about rehiring people.
When we hire somebody, we're definitely going to need them. I mean, we're not going to hire one person until we need 2 or 3, and we're probably not going to hire 2 until we need 4 or 5.
And that's why the recovery is lifeless. Big and small, businesses have settled into doing more with fewer people.
You ask people to step it up and you know, work harder, work longer, make less.
Is it sort of a new normal?
I think for now it is.
Take a quick look around Newton. Gary Forbes laid off half of his 60 employees, closed 2 locations, and switched from selling top quality furniture to scratched and dented. Website designer Cindy Bruner laid off 6 of her 14 employees. This was the Chrysler dealer, the Chevy dealer, the Tractor Supply Company. Since the recession, we've seen a lot of troubled towns in the country, but nothing that looks quite as broken as Newton. Even the local chapter of the Optimist Club has closed.
You know, I want to tell everybody that we're a company town. We're the company left, but we're going to thrive.
Chaz Allen is the mayor of this town of 15,000 people. It's a part-time job, pays about $4,000 a year. Allen walked us through an abandoned Maytag plant that, at its peak, held 2,500 factory workers building washers and dryers. If anyone out there is interested, the mayor has more than 1.7 million square feet to rent.
It is available. It is available. We'll make you a good deal.
The mayor's been trying to pull new jobs into town. He made a run at green energy and got a company that makes wind turbine blades. But every time he gets a few hundred jobs, he seems to lose a few hundred. This fall, a telecom company called Windstream had 2 layoffs.
It was 60 and then it was 146 the next time.
How does that affect people around here?
You know, it's a roller coaster. I want to say that, I mean, I was affected in the first layoff. I was one at the Windstream that was affected the first round.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
They laid off the mayor?
Yeah.
Are you working now?
No.
His town is shrinking. This year they closed an elementary school, and they're slashing the city budget.
Have you already lost policemen?
Yes.
Firemen?
Yes.
What about the hospital in town?
It's being reduced in size as well.
And that is the backdrop for Tuesday's election. In our national poll, we asked, what's the most important issue in America? 54% said jobs. Healthcare came in second at 7%. Only 1% said the war. Newton's congressional district is bipartisan country. It voted for George Bush in 2004 and then for President Obama.
Hi, how you doing?
But now Democratic Congressman Leonard Boswell is fighting for his job. He's been reelected here 6 times, but this week his race against Republican Brad Zahn is too close to call.
My wife and I watched the news last night, and I think every ad was a political ad.
Who do you trust? With your money, with your future? It's not Brad Zahn.
Leonard Boswell, too wrong for too long.
Incredibly, Bruce Braley supports building a mosque at Ground Zero.
How much relevance does all of that have to
Nothing.
you?
Nothing. Doesn't have a bit of relevance to me.
We invited some of the folks in town to the Legion Hall.
How many of you would say that you're angry about politics right now?
Yes.
Oh, that got a big yes.
I'm sick and tired of people going to Congress in Washington, D.C. and making a living out of it while we starve to death.
Does it matter much to anyone in here whether the Republicans or the Democrats control the House, for example?
No.
Doesn't matter?
No.
If a Republican says it, the Democrats don't listen. If the Democrats say it, the Republicans don't care what they're saying.
What gets done in Washington? What gets done at the Iowa State House? Very little gets done. I mean, everything comes down to either abortion issues, gay marriage issues. It needs to go above and beyond that.
I don't have a job. That's all I care about. I don't care about the Republicans or the Democrats. I care about Newton, Iowa, the job situation, the financial situation.
We went to the foreclosure auction the other day. Nobody bid on anything.
Nobody has any money.
Help us. Do something about the economy. It's really hard out here.
The economy is not spurring jobs.
Todd Meyer was laid off from the same telecom company that laid off the mayor.
You served in the Gulf War.
I did.
You were in the Navy.
Yep.
In combat there.
Yep. USS George Washington.
And now you're unemployed.
Yes.
Meyer and his wife Teresa are raising 3 kids. Their daughter Caitlin is the first in the family to go to college.
I get emotional about it because it's just, we never expected to be in this position. But, I look at my daughter and I just think, how do I keep her in college?
It's every parent's dream to send their child to college, especially if that parent didn't have the same opportunity.
I've had this dream since I was really little, and my parents have done everything they can, and it's just starting to get hard, and I'm going to try and help out, but it's hard to see that dream slip away.
How many of you think that your children will enjoy the same standard of living that you did?
This worry, pessimism really, weighs on families who had seen a different future.
How many employees did you have at the peak?
22.
How many do you have now?
I'm down to 7. Half pepperoni, half pineapple. All right, fantastic.
Scott Creech bought his own pizza franchise in Newton 21 years ago.
How many hours are you working?
Last week it was 82.
82 hours in a week?
Correct.
How long can you do that?
Until I die.
Sales have slipped to a place that's sometimes dangerous for his family.
Once you get down around this area, I may be able to file for food stamps.
His wife, Julie, is working at a school to take some of the pressure off.
He's 52 years old now, and I worry about him every day. His brother died of a heart attack when he was in his 40s, and I worry about that all the time.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, how are ya?
His son Parker is 10. Creech comes home to put Parker in bed, but then he heads back to the shop. He washes up and closes up about 1 a.m. I wonder what the stress has been like for you.
I've been blessed. You know, you have guilt.
Guilt about what?
You'd like to have that 8 to 5 job, holidays off, but
you can't do that now.
No.
Nationwide, the number of small businesses going bankrupt each year has tripled since the recession. There were 60,000 bankruptcies last year alone. When you're looking for the path out of this flat recovery, there are a couple of things that strike you. One, small businesses create most of the jobs in this country, 65% of all new jobs. But lending to small businesses is actually declining. In the second quarter of this year, lending to small businesses and farms dropped by $13 billion. That's nearly 2%. So 3 years after the beginning of the Great Recession, with interest rates the lowest they've ever been in history, banks are lending less money to the engines that create jobs. Have you gone to the bank?
Yeah. That's amazing, because you know you hear stories about how lending is going to be more friendly, and you know even the president himself is going to tell banks that they need to understand what businesses are going through. There's no banks. The banks don't understand anything. They won't loan me a dime.
And you went to the bank and they said what?
Come back when you have a couple of good years behind you. Really? Because I won't need you then.
They'll offer money to you when you don't need it, but when you need it, you can't get it.
Perfect. Okay, we like to hear that. Here's your
Alan
extra links
Yagi
in
has
your
been
box.
losing money at his jewelry store on the Courthouse Square for a year and a half. He makes a lot of his own jewelry, and to try to match his customers' falling income, he switched from gold to silver, diamonds to beads. His employees, Darlene Swank and Tina Kono, even volunteered to cut their hours. You're going to have to let Tina and Darlene go.
It's hard. It's hard.
Do you remember when you had to sit down and explain it to them?
Yeah, I talked to Darlene first. I didn't have to say anything. She knew. You know, she does our books, and she knew.
And what did the books tell you? Help me understand.
You just can't keep doing what you're doing. You know, as hard as it is, we tried.
His store closed this weekend. More layoffs reduce demand, which creates more layoffs. Change may be coming again to Washington, but in Newton, many believe the struggle will stay the same as family businesses work to steal another day from the Great Recession.